Some say your home is your sanctuary, a place of safety and peace. But what if the real threat isn't from a stranger on the street, but from the person living right next door? The person you might share a nod with, or see taking out their trash. Tonight, we delve into 3 terrifying true stories about neighbors who turn the familiar into the frightening. These aren't tales of fiction. They are based on real police reports and documented accounts. The horror is real, and it's closer than you think. Our first story takes us to a quiet suburban street in Ohio. Back in 2020, a woman living alone in her 2-story house started to notice strange things. It began with a sound, a faint, rhythmic thump coming from the ceiling above her bedroom. Every night, just as the house settled into silence, she'd hear it. Footsteps. At first, she dismissed it. It had to be raccoons or squirrels in the attic, a common problem in the area. She told herself it was nothing to worry about. But then, things escalated. Small, personal items started to vanish from her bedroom: a hairbrush, a book she was reading, a photograph from her nightstand. She'd searched the house, convinced she had just misplaced them, but they were gone. Food began to disappear from the kitchen too. A loaf of bread she'd just bought, leftovers from the fridge. The feeling of unease grew into a constant, gnawing dread. She wasn't just losing things. She felt like she was losing her mind. She started to feel like she was being watched, a persistent, invisible presence in her own home. The house no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a cage she was sharing with something unseen. One evening, driven by a mix of fear and desperation, she decided to get proof. She placed her phone on her nightstand, set it to record audio, and tried to sleep. The next morning, she played it back. Her heart pounded as she listened to the silence. Then, clear as day, the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps pacing back and forth, directly above her head. These were not the skittering sounds of an animal. They were human. Terrified, she called the police. When they arrived, they cautiously made their way to the attic hatch in her hallway closet. What they found was the stuff of nightmares. A man, homeless and desperate, had been secretly living in her attic for months. He had created a small, makeshift living space among the dust and insulation. He would wait until she left for work to come down for food and water, and at night, he would listen to her sleep, pacing just feet above her bed. He had been watching her every move, an unseen roommate in the darkest corner of her home. The silence in your own home can be deceptive. Sometimes, it's what you don't hear that you should be afraid of. Next, we traveled to Sydney, Australia, in 2022. In a modern apartment building, residents began sharing unsettling stories about one of their neighbors. It wasn't loud parties or arguments that disturbed them. It was his silence. Multiple tenants on the same floor reported the same chilling experience. They would be woken up in the dead of night, around 3 a.m., by a strange feeling. When they looked through their peephole, they would see him, a man from down the hall, standing motionless in the dimly lit corridor, just staring at their door. He wouldn't knock. He wouldn't make a sound. He would just stand there, for hours, his eyes fixed on their apartment. One resident described his expression as completely blank, almost inhuman. Another said they once saw him crack a slow, unnerving smile before he turned and walked away. The fear was palpable. People stopped leaving their apartments after dark. The hallway, once a simple path to their homes, became a source of terror. The complaints didn't stop there. Residents started hearing soft whispering coming through their air vents, faint murmurs that were impossible to make out. They heard gentle, rhythmic tapping on the walls, separating their apartments from his. It was a psychological torment, a constant, low-level harassment that made everyone feel unsafe. When several residents filed official complaints with building management and the police, an investigation was launched. The truth was far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The man had discovered a way to access the building's network of maintenance shafts and crawl spaces. He had been secretly entering vacant apartments on the floor. From there, he found he could remove vent covers and peer into the occupied units. He wasn't just standing in the hallway. He was inside the walls, watching families as they ate dinner, watching people as they slept in their beds, completely unaware of the eyes just a few feet away. His silent vigils in the hallway were just a part of his twisted ritual. He was arrested, but the residents of that floor were forever changed, haunted by the knowledge of how easily their privacy and their safety had been violated. Our final story brings us to the snowy, forested landscape of British Columbia, Canada. In 2021, A family living in a secluded home on the edge of the woods noticed a strange pattern. Every night, between 2 and 4 a.m., their motion-activated floodlights in the backyard would switch on, bathing the snowy landscape in a stark, bright light. They assumed it was deer or other wildlife wandering from the nearby forest. It was a minor annoyance, nothing more. But the consistency of it, the same time every night, began to feel strange. To satisfy their curiosity and put their minds at ease, they installed a security camera overlooking the backyard. The first few nights, the camera captured exactly what they expected: deer, raccoons, the occasional fox. They felt a sense of relief. But then, one morning, they checked the footage and saw something that made their blood run cold. The motion alert had been triggered at 3:17 a.m. The floodlights snapped on, illuminating the fresh snow. But this was no animal. The footage showed a figure, a person dressed in dark clothing with their face obscured by a mask, crawling on all fours from the edge of the woods toward their house. The figure moved slowly, methodically, like a predator stalking its prey. It crawled up to their patio door, testing the handle. It moved to the kitchen window, peering inside, its breath fogging the cold glass. The family watched in horror as the figure spent nearly 20 minutes circling their home, testing every door and window, all while muttering softly to itself, the words unclear on the camera's audio. They immediately called the police and showed them the terrifying footage. The investigation uncovered something even more sinister. The neighbor, who lived a few houses down, had been doing this for months, not just to them, but to multiple homes in the area. He had spent months creating a network of hidden paths and tunnels through the dense woods and undeveloped land between the backyards, allowing him to move between properties unseen. He was a nocturnal predator, exploring the neighborhood under the cover of darkness, his motives unknown. The family had slept soundly, believing they were safe, while just outside their window, a masked man crawled through the snow, testing the locks on their doors. 3 stories, 3 different countries, one chilling reality: the person you wave to over the fence, the one you share an elevator with, the quiet neighbor at the end of the street. You may see them every day, but you never truly know who lives beside you. Thanks for watching. If you have a story you'd like to share, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to lock your doors tonight.